Welcome back, squirrels, to another week of ADHD. Today, we are diving into a topic that hits close to home for a lot of us with ADHD, and that is overcommitment syndrome. And those of y'all who are watching the video of this can see that I myself am a victim of overcommitment syndrome today. I am just showing up the best way I can, but I have to tell you, I'm a bit of a disheveled mess. And like, what is the deal with that? Have you ever found yourself saying yes to everything only to feel buried of the weight of all of your commitments afterwards? You say yes and yes and yes and that yes. And then you just look up and you are absolutely drowning under the weight of all of the commitments that you've agreed to. And if you've ever wondered why we do this and how to stop it, then this episode is for you. For those of y'all who are joining us again, welcome back. I'm so glad to see you here. For those of you who don't know us yet, we are in season 2 of ADHD here, Life Unfiltered, where we talk about all the messy, all of the stuff that we don't really like to talk about. And I personally get very vulnerable on this podcast, which is pretty uncomfortable, but you know, we're doing things scared. We're showing up brave this year and just showing up the way that we are in the best way possible. So let's get into it. Overcommitment, right? I mean, I'm trying to think of an example, but it's hard to think of just one, because when I think of my whole life, that's kind of what I think of, is being busy with a lot of different things. And probably one of the examples that stands out strongest to me, I was 15 or 16 years old. And I was in my senior year of high school, and I was just generally like pretty bored in class. So I found a bunch of other stuff to keep me occupied. Like, I participated in different projects in the school. I organized all sorts of initiatives. I was a youth group leader. I had a part-time job. I was tutoring kids who didn't know English how to read English. I was volunteering with special needs children and at an old age home or a nursing home. What else was I doing? I don't know. I was just like living my best life, doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I was a coach on my swim team, as well as being an active competitor on my swim team at the time. And I got into a fight with my parents because my report card was not what they thought it should have been. And it was whatever. It was probably like 80s. But, you know, they always knew, of course, that I had a lot of potential and I just wasn't living up to my potential. Raise your hand if you've ever heard that gem before in your life. But I had all this potential that I wasn't living up to. And I remember feeling like so unseen and so unheard in that moment of like, don't you see me? Don't you see all of the different things that I'm doing? Don't you see everything that I do for everybody and everything that I'm constantly giving of myself? And I honestly, like, I freaked the fuck out. I was yelling at them. I was so upset. And like, part of that obviously is teenage angst and like fighting with your parents. And part of it was like, I'm doing everything that I can possibly do. Like, I committed to all this stuff. I'm living up to all of my commitments. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm doing a really good job at it. So like, why don't you see me? And what they were saying is like, there's other stuff here that's important that you're not paying attention to. And you need to. You can't just pick and choose the stuff that you're interested in and expect everything else to figure itself out, right? Especially when you're a kid, you just really don't have that luxury when you're living in a school system and you're living in the life that we have, where you need to be successful in school and you need to do well in order to move on properly to the next step and to the next stage, which for most people, or at least in previous thinking, was moving on to higher education. So both sides of that coin are valid, right? Like, I'm doing all of this stuff. Look how full my plate is. And also, hey, there's some things that are spilling over that you're not taking care of. Both of those arguments are equally valid and both of them are important, but only some of them ring true for ADHDers. So why do we do that? Why do we keep piling our plates until they're overflowing, just putting on more and more and more and more and more? Like when I go to a buffet, preferably at a hotel, it's like simultaneously my most favorite and least favorite because I like to try a little bit of everything that I want. But if there's too many things that I want, then it becomes overwhelming, right? So I need to go to a buffet where there's just the right amount of things that I'm going to want to try on my plate. Like there should be between 15 and 20 things that I want to eat at that buffet. If there's any more than that, it's just simply too overwhelming and I don't know what to do. And like I end up putting stuff on my plate that I don't really want and it's hard to make choices. And then like my plate's too full and everything gets mixed together and it's all yucky and less. That's kind of what our lives look like sometimes as people with ADHD because we have very special brains. And the first piece of that is the people pleasing part of our brain. We have dopamine seeking tendencies, and there's a thrill of finding new projects and taking on new commitments and saying yes to things. Just like there's a thrill with taking something from the buffet that you haven't tried before and putting it on your plate. But you are taking up the spot of something else when you put that on your plate. Using the buffet example, like keep it in your mind, honestly, because your plate has a specific amount of space on it. If you put something on your plate, that is going to take up space that could otherwise be allocated to something else. Your brain and your energy are exactly the same. If you put something in that space and you take up some of that energy, you won't have that energy, you won't have that brain space for something else that you might want to do in the future. And then the other side of people pleasing, besides like the dopamine and the yay of saying yes to something and taking on a new project, is the fear of disappointing people and a deep need to be liked. And often that comes with RSD or rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which is an enlarged perception of rejection. So we feel rejection very, very big, maybe bigger than the actual rejection is. And that makes it extra hard to disappoint people. So somebody comes up to you and they say, hey, do you want to try this? I made it. And your plate is already piled high from the buffet. And you know that if you say no to them, they're going to be disappointed. And not only disappointed for themselves, but disappointed in you. Sometimes that feeling is just like too much. And it's just better to say yes. Like, let's just say yes and keep it pushing because we also believe that we can do everything, right? We not only have time blindness, but we tend to overestimate our capacity. Time blindness, it happens to everybody. It's called the planning fallacy in social psychology, which is that human beings don't rely on their memories when they're thinking of how long something is going to take them. So the planning fallacy says that when you're thinking of how long something is going to take you, you look forward and anticipate instead of looking backwards and actually taking information from your past to estimate how long it's going to take. So it's almost like wishful thinking when we're estimating how long something is going to take us because we don't actually think about it all that well. With people with ADHD, that overestimation is enlarged. We are optimistic over planners, and we really actually think that we can do everything. Not only do we struggle to gauge how much time a task is going to take us, but we also struggle to gauge how much energy a task is going to take us. Because we have all or nothing thinking, we think that give it 100% or give it everything you got means literally give it everything that you have, when that's not what energy is. You can only give the energy to a particular task that is allocated to that specific task. And if you give all of the energy that you possibly have, then you won't have any energy left for other things. So we ADHDers are particularly bad at that kind of planning and estimation, how much time and energy something is going to take us. And then there's the last one. The last one hurts. And for those of you who were here last week, we spoke about this a little bit more in depth. If not, go back and check out episode 15 on imposter syndrome. But why do we say yes to everything? We say yes to everything because we constantly feel like we need to prove our worth. Especially in a society where you need to be productive to be worthy. Especially with your background of being told that you're not actually being productive, or your productivity was questioned and criticized, your processes were criticized, you were told that you have a lot of potential, but you're lazy. Therefore, we avoid downtime because it feels unproductive. It feels lazy. It feels like we're not proving our worth. And we constantly need to be doing that. So we say yes, and yes, and yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. And then what ends up happening? Ultimately, we can't hold all of those yeses. Ultimately, we're going to run out of energy. Ultimately, we're going to realize that the people pleasing wasn't pleasing ourselves. Ultimately, we're going to realize and we're going to feel a deep pit because you're constantly trying to prove yourself to another person, to someone else, to something outside of yourself. And you're not actually giving yourself the rest and the care that you need, which keeps you in this rat race or squirrel race, if you will, of just running all the time. And that has emotional and practical costs. Saying yes to everything comes at a huge cost. And that cost is often higher than we can anticipate. Some of the emotional costs that we know and that we see on bigger scales or smaller scales are burnout, stress, feeling overwhelmed and like resentful. I remember I used to go to visit my parents. You'll notice that a lot of my ADHD triggers surround my parents, because a lot of my ADHD triggers surround my childhood when I really didn't have a good understanding of my brain. So this isn't specific about my parents at all. It's just being a child of the 90s and not knowing what ADHD looked like in women or girls or at all. So let me close that parentheses for a second. But I used to go to my parents' house and I would cook for my whole family because my mother doesn't really like cooking. My father doesn't really cook. He has like a couple things he likes to make, but there's only so many times you can eat hot dogs and baked beans. And I would go and I like eating good food. I like cooking. And whenever I would go to my parents' house, I would end up cooking meals for everybody. And I would spend time cooking and cooking and cooking and cooking. And also my husband is celiac, so I wanted to make sure that he had the food that he needed. And I would get so annoyed and so angry and resentful at the fact that I was cooking for everybody. But no one asked you to cook. I took it on myself. And I would just sit there and stew and be so annoyed that I was in the kitchen all by myself and doing this by myself. Well, I'm the one who said yes to something and overcommitted myself and allowed myself to become resentful towards those commitments. And then that leads to guilt, right? When you inevitably drop the ball because your plate is piled way too high, there's too many things on your plate, something is going to fall off. If you fill up your plate two stories high at the buffet, when you're walking back to the table, you're going to drop food on the floor. And that's not only wasteful, it's also kind of embarrassing. And then everyone's looking at you and the food is on the floor and you're standing there with your piled high plate and you can't even remember why you put all that stuff on your plate in the first place. The emotional cost there is extremely high. And it's not only a very high cost, it's cumulative, meaning that the damage builds up on itself. It's not just like, oh, I'm stressed today. No, the burnout accumulates. Everything just compounds and gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you can't take it anymore. There's practical costs of missed deadlines, of unfinished projects, of committing to something because you really felt like you could and then not doing it. When I was in university, I took part in a dialogue group. And I believe that the dialogue group was between religious Jews and secular Jews. And I'm not sure what category I put myself in at the time. So I don't know what I was, what camp I fell in at that particular seminar and the subsequent retreats. But one of the things that Shai, our facilitator, said has stuck with me, and this example stuck with me exactly. He said, what if I prepare a report for somebody and it's a military report, so it's very time sensitive, and I'm preparing this report and I really want it to be perfect. So I miss my deadline and I don't hand it in yet, and I create the most perfect report ever to exist and I hand it in, and then it's too late because the deadline has passed and that mission has been deployed and the report that I've been working on is no longer relevant. So it might be the world's most perfect and most comprehensive report, but it was absolutely useless because I missed my deadline. And that's the same sentiment as my current business coach, Derek Harper Sr., says now, which is that done is better than perfect, because perfect never gets done. When you say yes to too many things and you think that you can do everything, and you are a human who is very unwilling to compromise on the quality of your work because you pride yourself on a job well done, you will miss deadlines and you will have unfinished projects. And then your relationships will be strained due to those unfulfilled promises. There is no quicker way to erode the trust with somebody than to promise to do something and not do it. That leads to a ripple effect of overcommitting and then under-delivering. But you didn't necessarily, ultimately you did overcommit and underdeliver. And it wasn't because you meant to. You weren't trying to do the wrong thing. You weren't trying to say yes to something and that you knew you wouldn't be able to deliver on. You're not lying, but you are. You are refusing to learn from your own patterns and you're lying to yourself consistently. So that impacts your self-esteem and it impacts your ability to trust yourself, because your brain is an amazing machine and it can really do a lot of things. But one of the things that it doesn't do very well is follow through on tasks. Your ADHD brain can do all of the planning and all of the groundwork and do everything 95% of the way there, but that last 5% is really not your strong suit. So when you overcommit and you underdeliver based on what you know you have the capacity to deliver, you negatively impact your self-esteem. Because what did I tell myself? I just told myself, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it, and then I couldn't do it. So what does that mean? I must be trash. You're not trash. You just said yes to too many things. You didn't set yourself up for success on the front end. Overcommitting doesn't actually do anything for anyone. Just like people pleasing doesn't actually please people. Maybe it pleases people who are intending to take advantage of you, but it certainly doesn't please yourself. And if you're not pleasing yourself, then you're not really doing everything you can to be the best version of yourself for the people around you. Now, if you are like me, you're probably screaming in your mind or maybe out loud if you're a little braver than I am. But like, I know I can do everything. I know I could do it. If only I could just figure out how to, whatever, insert wishful thinking and magical thinking here, then I'd be able to figure it out. Then I'd be able to get it done. If only I could just, then I'd be fine. And I would propose to you that that pattern of thinking is not serving you. I know that you have spent your whole life being told that you're not living up to your potential. And I know that your potential is even greater than anyone can see. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. I'm thinking of my daughter. She's 6.5 now. When this happened, she was probably 5. And we were in a park, and in that park, there was like a little ravine, like a little almost sewer channel that was running through 2 ends of the park. And some of the kids were jumping over from one side to the other. It was probably like it's a fairly large jump, like a 7 or 8 foot jump across. And my daughter said to me, "I can jump that." And I said, "How do you know?" And she said, "Because I did it in my mind." And I thought that was so cool for 2 reasons. One, it demonstrates so easily how we fall into this planning fallacy and how we fall into this time blindness and overestimation spiral. Because you, with an ADHD mind, you have a very visual mind. You can put all of the pieces together. You beautiful neurodivergent you. And if you see the problem and you can see yourself solving it, then you've already done it in your mind. You already know that you can do it. And the fact of the matter is, you probably can do it, but not always right away with the skills that you have. Because ultimately, what happened when my daughter tried to jump over the 7 foot or 8 foot jump? She couldn't. Why? Because she's a little person with little legs. But she found that when she walked down the slope a little bit, and then the jump was only about 4 or 5 feet, she was able to make that jump and then climb back up. That is such a beautiful example of overcommitting, right? I say, "Can you do this thing in our example? Can you jump from this side to the other side?" And I say, "Oh, yes, 100% I can do that. No problem." Because I look at it and I see it and I solve it in my mind. So I think excuse me. I look at the problem in front of me and I see it in my mind, and I see, if I had all of the ideal resources, how would I solve this problem? If I had long enough legs and enough strength and stamina to jump from one side to the other, then 100% I'd be able to jump from one side to the other. It is possible and it is doable, therefore I can do it. And then when she tried it in real life, she couldn't, because she didn't have the resources necessary for that to happen. She didn't have either a support to get herself across, like a stick, or long enough legs, or like superhuman jumping strength. She didn't have those things. But what was she able to do? She was still able to get to the other side by climbing down a little bit, making a shorter jump, and then climbing back up. And when she's older or stronger or has longer legs or the proper tools, then maybe she can go back and jump over it again from the top. You see how when she overcommitted to something and then wasn't able to do it, she inevitably was not able to do it because she overcommitted. But what she did, and this is why my kids are my greatest teachers, is she figured it out within her parameters. She figured it out within what she does have and within what she is capable of, and she made it to the other side. She didn't say, oh, yeah, you're right. I can't do it. Oh, man, I can't believe I thought I could. Oh, I'm so garbage that I thought that I could do something that I couldn't do. Dumb waste of time to think like that and to talk to yourself that way. She just figured it out. She's like, oh, well, if I do this and that, I can figure it out. So let's talk solutions because I don't like to leave y'all with the problems and no solutions. Breaking free from overcommitment is hard, but it's not impossible. The first thing that we need to do is start with awareness. Okay. What are you currently doing? What are your current commitments? Keep a list, keep a board, something visual that you can see. What am I currently working on? And that will allow you to visualize how much space you actually have, how much capacity you actually have left. And this is actually really interesting because this is one of the things that I did to realize that the dynamics in my household needed to change. I listed out everything that I was doing and everything that I was working on and everything that everyone in my circle of support was doing and what they were working on. And my load compared to other people's load was out of control. It was like 10 times the amount of things. So just visually, I'm looking at it and like, yeah, okay, I'm a person with a lot of capacity. I'm able to do a lot of things at once. I can keep a lot of different irons in the fire, but I can't produce on all of these fronts. I'm like, I need to ask for some help because I can see by the amount of tasks that I'm doing that I'm not going to be able to sustain my current efforts. Like I'm gonna burn out. I'm going to crash. This is going to be really, really bad if I don't offload some things from my plate. And like, take a second to reflect and really think back. So remember what we said about the planning fallacy. The planning fallacy is wishful thinking, looking forward instead of taking a minute and looking back. Reflect on how overcommitting has impacted your life in the past, predominantly negatively, right? Like, oh, the last time I said yes and yes and yes and yes, what happened? Think backwards to something that actually happened. Don't let your brain trick you into thinking that it's going to be different this time. How do we do that? You have to pause. Create a pause before saying yes to something. Usually somebody else is asking you for help with something. They're saying, can you take on this? There's a ton of different things that you can say. Create space between you and that person so that you can think about it on your own time without feeling pressured. You can say, let me check my calendar and get back to you. You can blame another person. You can say, oh, I just need to check in with so-and-so before I can let you know. You can say, I don't really have the time to think about that right now, but let me take a look at it and get back to you later. Just creating any sort of space between you and the person who's making a request of your time and energy. Because ultimately, you get to decide whether you are available for somebody or not. You're the decider of your time and your energy. You get to make choices. And whenever you come to that decision, that is the right decision because it's the decision that you made for yourself. You are the decider. So once you've decided, if you've decided, no, I can't do this right now, I'd be overcommitting myself. Just say no, right? Practice saying no without over-explaining. What the over-explaining looks like is this. I would absolutely love to, but I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to say no this time. My schedule is just completely overrun. I have to pick up the kids in the afternoon and I still have to return a bunch of things to the store and I'm just on a really tight deadline at work and I wish I could, but I can't. You don't have to justify why you aren't able to help somebody if it doesn't work for you. So practice saying no. For example, thank you so much for thinking of me. I'm going to have to pass this time. Or I can't take this on right now. Or I wish I could, but I'm just overcommitted. Simple. you don't require an explanation, or they shouldn't require an explanation of you. And somebody who asks you, why not? Why can't you? You did it last time. That's an indicator that maybe they're focused more on themselves and their needs than they can be focused on you and your needs. You really need friends and supporters in your life who are able to understand that when you can be there, you will be there. And when you can't, you simply can't. And that's okay. That doesn't make you a bad person or a bad friend. It just means that you have other things to take care of right now. And you'll often see that the biggest celebrators in your life, the people who are really there for you and supportive of you, will always understand when you need to take time away. They just will. And if they're angry about it or they don't understand why you have to take time away, well, they were in that relationship for themselves in the first place. And it wasn't as reciprocal as you thought it was. In order for you to know what to say yes to, how do I know what to say yes to and what not to say yes to? Prioritize what matters most to you. Identify your big rocks, which are your key priorities, right? If you think about filling up a jar with rocks and pebbles and sand, the first thing you have to put in is the rocks. Those take up the most amount of space. Those are your key priorities. The next thing that comes in are the pebbles, the things that are nice to have, the things that you would like, but you can live without. And then the rest of the stuff is sand. The rest of the stuff just fills in the space if you have time, and if you can, then great. But you need to identify for yourself what those big rocks are. What are those key anchors in your life that you can't live without? For me, that's time for my business, time with my family, exercising, and time outdoors in nature. Those are my big rocks. The pebbles are time with friends, reading, vacations, all kinds of different things like that. Those are my pebbles. Cooking, all those are nice to have, but if I don't have it, then it's not the biggest deal. And when someone asks you something, they ask you for something, right? We're talking about overcommitment. You then create a pause before you say yes and ask yourself, does this align with my values and goals? So if you are focusing on your business right now, and that's one of your key priorities, and time with your friends is one of your pebbles, you have something to work on in your business, and your friend asks you, hey, you want to grab a drink later? The answer to the question, does this align with my values and goals right now? Does this align with my key priorities, with my big rocks? The answer is no. So then I'm going to have to decline. Now you go back and you say, thank you so much for thinking of me, but I'm going to have to pass. That's okay. That's more like on an interpersonal level. Like, how do I deal with knowing what's important to me and then communicating that with the people around me? But there's a couple of other elements that come into problem solving to break free from overcommitment. And one of those things that takes really a long time and a lot of practice is building time awareness. This is something that does not come naturally for you with ADHD. You naturally have time blindness, meaning that there's only two times that exist. There is now, and then there is not now. Those are the only two times that exist in the entire world. And if something is happening now, great, I'm going to do it right now. And if it's happening not now, well, then I'm probably not so good at estimating when it's going to be happening. And I'm probably not so good at really planning my time properly. So we build time awareness by using tools that are external to ourselves. Timers, calendars, task management apps, a virtual assistant or an executive assistant who can remind you of things. Specifically visual timers. I like to use things like with big red hands, things that have like a very visual element to it so I can see the time moving and ticking away. Otherwise, time has a tendency to become very fluid in my life. And very importantly, add buffer time between your commitments to avoid burnout. So if your meetings should take half an hour and you normally babble on for an additional 15 minutes, So schedule your meetings with a 15-minute buffer on each side. So now, even if you are overextended your meeting, you still have a little bit of time to rest in between. Or maybe you get lost a lot, like me and some other people I know. You always need to leave that buffer time for traffic. You always need to leave that buffer time for taking a wrong turn. Traffic and taking a wrong turn in our life as ADHD look like side quests and distraction. There is always traffic and there is always wrong turns but when we move between tasks, when we have some sort of transition. So you need to build that time awareness externally. And my favorite way to do that, and this is my primary solution to basically everything that has to do with ADHD, is to enlist accountability. Share your goals with your friends, with your coaches, with an accountability partner, with your virtual assistant, preferably with your coworkers, with your co-founders, with your spouses, with whoever it is. Share your goals. I am looking to overcommit less. I am looking to be more mindful of where I spend my time. I'm looking to have more time for myself. I'm looking to feel like I still have capacity at the end of the day. I'm looking to reach the end of the day with wow, words are hard. I'm looking to reach the end of the day with gas still left in my tank and not completely and totally overextend myself. And when you share these goals with trusted people, they should want to help you. If they say things like, really, you want to spend less time on other people? Really? You feel like you don't have time to do everything you want? Really? But you're wasting time here and you're wasting time there and blah, blah, blah. It's possible that they don't share those same goals for you that you have for yourself. And that's okay. But sometimes it's worth it to create distance from people who do not share a vision and your goals for you. So let me tell you what it has looked like every time I've told my friends that I need more time for myself. First of all, it usually doesn't look like me going to them and saying, hey, I think I need some more time for myself. What it looks like is them coming to me and saying, you look like you're overextending yourself and taking on just way too many things. Is there anything that we can do to help? Either by taking something off of your plate or by helping you carve out some more time for yourself. Those accountability partners who are not only going to make sure that you are doing what you say you're going to do, they make sure that you treat yourself kindly while you're doing it. It is easier to shame yourself than to take true accountability and make changes. You are bad at time. You have time blindness. Therefore, you're always late to everything. No, you have time blindness. It's easy for a person to say, I have time blindness. It's not my fault that I'm late. But that's not the way that we do things in this house, right? Knowing that you have time blindness just means that you now know that you have something that needs to be addressed. You have something that you need tools to manage. You have something that you need accountability partners to help you with. You have something that requires attention. You don't just get to write things off as part of your personality and therefore feel like you're entitled to specific accommodations from other people. You have to accommodate yourself and you're not entitled to shit. So do that for yourself because you're worth it. As always, boundaries are where it's at. Protecting yourself is not selfish. It is necessary to make sure that you are the best version of you for yourself and for the people around you. And remember that breaking this cycle, being recovered people pleasers, it just doesn't happen overnight. It's about progress, as always, not about perfection. You're not going to be perfect. There are times that you are definitely going to overcommit. There are times that you are definitely going to miscalculate. There are times that you're going to fall victim to the planning fallacy, just like every other human in the world. But in celebrating progress and small wins, when it comes to breaking the cycle of your overcommitment, there's a few things that we can do. Reframe success. Okay. Success does not only mean doing the most things in the best way possible for the most amount of people and having so many people think that you're amazing and you're the best and that's not what success has to be. Because for you, actually, when you overcommit yourself, that's when you are the least successful. That's when you end up disappointing people. It's when you end up dropping the ball. Just say no and celebrate the power of a well-placed no. No is a complete sentence. No thank you is an even better sentence. There is value to doing fewer things better rather than committing to everything and taking everything on your plate and disappointing yourself and the people around you. You think that you're going to disappoint someone by saying, no, I can't do this. And really, you're disappointing them by saying, I can do this, 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 and not doing it well. Because it's not possible to do all of those things well. And please, I am urging you, reflect on how it feels to say no. Take note of the reactions of people in your life when you say no to them. Because I'm willing to bet that the reason that you don't say no to people has a lot more to do with you as a child and you in the past than it does with you right now. Maybe you grew up in a home where you had to prove your value and your worth by accomplishing specific things. And that saying no was seen as disrespectful, and saying no was seen as insubordination, and maybe you even got punished for saying no. You are an adult now, and the people around you need to respect you and your time and your efforts as their peer. And if they don't, you can choose not to have them in your life. You are the adult now. You are not required to stay around anybody who is not doing your spirit good. You are not required to stay around people who ask you to bend until you almost break and overcommit yourself and overstretch yourself. So let us know. Share a recent example of saying no and what it felt like. And I will go first, as always. In 2024, I was working with a nonprofit that is very near and dear to my heart. And we put in a lot of work and put together an absolutely incredible first event. And I noticed that I was doing a lot of the work myself. And it led to a point where I really truly was becoming resentful. And I would say yes to things and then I wouldn't deliver on them. And it felt just overwhelming and like I was doing too much, but I didn't want to say no because I didn't want to disappoint anybody. And ultimately, I was able to go to that team and say, like, I cannot do what I did last year. And the way that I created boundaries for myself in that situation was first I took a pause and created some space. Said, I need some time to think about this. I don't know how I'm going to be able to commit in the future, and I need to take some time and really think about it. I sat down and I looked at all of the different tasks I was doing and all the different stuff I was responsible for. And it was too much in one space. So I took a couple of months off. And I realized that in my work with that particular nonprofit, what matters most to me, my big rock for that particular project is making sure that the event happens. Not necessarily doing it all on my own, but making sure that I'm supporting wherever is necessary for that event to happen. And the way that I built time awareness and enlisted accountability was by blocking off a specific amount of time that they have me to work on this project. I will work with you 2 hours a week on Mondays. Within those 2 hours, you have all of my time and all of my focus, and I will do absolutely anything I can for you and get as much done as possible. But I don't take any specific tasks out of those meetings and accomplish them outside on my own time. I just didn't have the capacity to do that. And the reaction of my team members over there was absolute gratitude, because I was actually handicapping them by saying yes to things that I wasn't going to be able to properly deliver on in a timely fashion. I was tying their hands and in a way that like I thought I was helping. So then everyone is frustrated because I'm trying to help. So I'm saying that I'm going to do all sorts of things, but in the end, I'm not really helping. So they're frustrated as well. And it just creates frustration for everyone. And now everything works seamlessly, at least for me. They have other, they needed to enlist some other help, and that's okay. That's not my responsibility. You are not responsible for absolutely everything. So before we wrap up, here's the challenge for the week. And I'm excited about this one because this is a toughie. So for the next 7 days, pause before you commit to anything new. Even for just a couple of seconds, just pause, create some space and really think about it. And ask yourself if it aligns with your values and your interests at the time. And then practice saying no at least once and reflect on how it feels. Really take a minute to sit with how it feels to say no. And it's probably going to feel complicated. It's okay. We just need to be aware of the thing that exists. That's the best way of tackling it. So remember, squirrels, you don't have to do everything to be amazing. Not only do you not have to do everything, you cannot do everything. You can do anything, but you cannot do everything all at once. Progress is always the goal, not perfection. Practice makes progress. And saying no is just as powerful as saying yes, especially when it's aligned with your values. All of the no's that you say, all of those little no's, add up to the big things that you can say yes to. If you waste all your energy on the little yeses, you won't have any left when you really want to say yes to something, when something is really important to you. So let's together